The billionaire CEO froze mid-step when the little boy tugged his sleeve. His clothes were worn. Faded denim jacket 2 sizes too big. His shoes mismatched. One Nike knockoff, one scuffed Converse with a torn sole. But his eyes were steady, unflinching. "Sir," he said quietly, pointing at the photo in his hand, "that girl lives in my house." The rain kept falling on the Oakland street corner. The distant rumble of the BART train faded into white noise, and for the first time in 3 years, hope hurt more than grief. Ethan Cross was a man the world feared and admired in equal measure. Founder of Cross-Tech Industries, visionary who'd revolutionized cybersecurity for Fortune 500 companies. Billionaire whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Wired. But none of those words mattered anymore, because 3 years ago, his daughter disappeared. Without fingerprints, without witnesses, without answers. The FBI investigation collapsed after 6 months. The media moved on to fresher tragedies. His company's stock soared to record highs. Only Ethan didn't move on. He stopped trusting headlines that called him a tech titan, stopped trusting police who closed her case with bureaucratic sympathy, and eventually stopped trusting the hope that had kept him breathing through the first year of her absence. That's why he was standing on a rain-slicked sidewalk near Lake Merritt instead of in a Manhattan boardroom. Why his $1,000 suit was soaked through. Why his hands that had signed billion-dollar contracts, were trembling as they held cheap, photocopied flyers. Missing, Sophia Cross, age 7, when last seen. If you know anything, please call. He'd stopped counting how many he'd distributed, stopped noticing the pitying looks from passers-by who recognized him from business journals, stopped caring that his security team thought he was losing his mind. Maybe he was, but at least he was doing something. The boy, maybe 10 years old, with cautious brown eyes and dark hair that needed cutting, stood before him like an apparition. His backpack had a broken zipper held together with safety pins. His presence was so quiet, Ethan almost hadn't noticed his approach. "What did you say?" Ethan's voice cracked, barely a whisper. He pointed again at the flyer, his small finger landing directly on Sophia's smiling face. That photo had been taken at her 7th birthday party in their San Francisco penthouse, 3 weeks before she vanished from her private school's field trip to the Exploratorium. "That girl, she sleeps in the room next to mine." Time fractured. The world tilted on its axis. Ethan dropped to his knees on the wet pavement, eye level with this stranger who'd just spoken the impossible. Rain soaked through his pants. He didn't care. "What's her name?" His voice was raw, desperate. The boy hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be watching. "She says it's Lily, but sometimes she cries at night and says another name in her." "Sleep." Ethan's heart stopped. "What name?" The boy's voice dropped to barely audible. "Sophie." 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. That's how long Ethan Cross had been a father without a child. His San Francisco penthouse still looked like success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, minimalist furniture worth more than most people's houses, awards lining the hallway, Innovator of the Year, 40 under 40, Tech Visionary. But room 12, the one with the Princess Castle wallpaper and the untouched toy chest, remained exactly as it was the morning Sophia disappeared. Some mornings Ethan stood in that doorway for an hour before his assistant reminded him he had a board meeting. Some nights he fell asleep on the carpeted floor, surrounded by stuffed animals that still smelled faintly of her strawberry shampoo. His therapist called it complicated grief. His ex-wife called it pathological denial. Ethan called it Tuesday. Crosstech Industries didn't slow down because its founder was broken. If anything, the company thrived. Ethan poured his shattered soul into code, into contracts, into 18-hour workdays that left no room for feeling. His net worth doubled. His hair grayed at the temples. His wedding ring, the one from the marriage that couldn't survive Sophia's disappearance, sat in a drawer next to her last school photo. The FBI had been sympathetic at first. Agent Morrison promised they'd move heaven and earth. They interviewed everyone: teachers, classmates, museum staff. They analyzed security footage from every camera within 5 miles of the exploratorium. They searched the bay with divers. Nothing. Sophia had been there one moment during the field trip, standing near the tornado exhibit with her class. The next moment, she was gone. No screams, no struggles, just absence. Most likely a targeted abduction, Agent Morrison had said after month 6. Someone who knew her routine, knew the school's security protocols. These cases, when there's no immediate resolution. He'd trailed off, but Ethan heard what he didn't say. She's probably dead. But there was no body, no ransom, no DNA evidence in some killer's basement. Just a 7-year-old girl who'd vanished into San Francisco fog and never emerged. The media circus lasted 8 months. Headlines screamed, "Tech billionaire's daughter missing." Cross-family tragedy. Where is Sophia? Then came the think pieces, the speculation, the armchair detectives on Reddit who were convinced Ethan had orchestrated it himself for publicity. The conspiracy theorists who thought she'd been trafficked to foreign oligarchs. The psychics who claimed they could feel her energy for a consultation fee. Ethan's ex-wife, Jennifer, fled to her family's estate in the Hamptons. She couldn't bear San Francisco anymore. Every street corner held memories. Every playground echoed with ghost laughter. Their marriage, already strained by his workaholic tendencies and her socialite commitments, shattered completely. The divorce was finalized on what would have been Sophia's 8th birthday. Ethan signed the papers in his office, then drove to Ocean Beach and screamed at the Pacific until his voice gave out. After that, he stopped trusting systems. The FBI had their protocols. The police had their procedures. The private investigators he'd hired had their theories. But none of them brought her home. So Ethan did what he'd always done when faced with an impossible problem. He went back to first principles, stripped away the complexity, started from zero. He printed 5,000 flyers. He mapped every neighborhood in the Bay Area, and every weekend he walked those streets himself, handing Sophia's face to strangers, asking if they'd seen anything, refusing to let her become another cold case statistic. That's what brought him to Oakland on a gray November afternoon, standing outside the 12th Street BART station, when a thin boy with mismatched shoes destroyed and rebuilt his entire world with one sentence. Ethan couldn't breathe. The rain fell harder now, cold November drops that felt like tiny hammers against his skull. The boy stood perfectly still, his finger still pointing at Sophia's photo, as if he'd just announced the weather instead of resurrecting the dead. Where? Ethan managed. His hands were shaking so violently, he nearly dropped the flyers. Where is she? The boy glanced around nervously. The street was crowded with afternoon commuters streaming out of the BART station. Tech workers heading home to Emeryville, students with UC Berkeley hoodies, families with strollers navigating cracked sidewalks. "I shouldn't have said anything," he whispered, taking a step back. "Mrs. Vance gets mad when I talk to strangers." "Wait!" Ethan reached out, but stopped himself from grabbing him. Every instinct screamed to hold this child here, to demand answers, to shake the truth out of the universe. But he looked terrified. Please, I'm not going to hurt you. That's my daughter. Her name is Sophia. She's been missing for 3 years." The boy's eyes widened. 3 years? But Lily's only been with us for, I don't know, maybe 6 months? 6 months. The timeline didn't make sense, but Ethan didn't care. After 3 years of nothing, no leads, no hope, no trace. 6 months was an eternity ago, and also yesterday. "What's your name?" he asked gently, crouching down despite the rain soaking through his knees. "Marcus. Marcus, I need you to understand something." Ethan's voice cracked. "If that girl is really in your house, if she's really Sophia, you might have just saved her life. Can you take me to her?" Marcus's face twisted with uncertainty. He was young, but not young enough to miss the desperation in Ethan's eyes. "I don't know if I should. Mrs. Vance says we're not supposed to bring people home. And Lily, she doesn't talk much. She seems scared all the time." Those words landed like physical blows. Scared. His Sophia, who'd been fearless, who'd demanded to ride the big kid swings at Golden Gate Park, who'd announced at age 6 that she was going to be an astronaut and a veterinarian. Scared. "Marcus," Ethan said carefully, "is Mrs. Vance nice to you? To Lily?" The boy's silence was answer enough. "She's okay," Marcus finally said. "Better than some of the other places I've been. But she has a lot of rules. And when Lily first came, she was really sick, crying all the time, not eating. Mrs. Vance said she'd been abandoned, that nobody wanted her." Abandoned. The word made Ethan's vision blur with rage. "That's not true," he said fiercely. "If that's Sophia, she was stolen, taken from me. I've been looking for her every single day since she disappeared. Every single day." Marcus studied him with eyes too old for his small face. He'd clearly learned to read adults, to calculate threat levels, to survive. After a long moment, he made a decision. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll show you. But you can't tell Mrs. Vance I brought you. She'll send me away again." Ethan's heart broke for this child too. This boy who'd stumbled into his nightmare with courage and truth. "I promise," he said. "I won't let anything happen to you." They walked through Oakland as the rain turned to drizzle, past murals on Telegraph Avenue, past the Fox Theatre and aging Victorians, past corner stores with Spanish signage and soul food restaurants that smelled like home. Marcus led him deeper into East Oakland, where the houses got smaller and the sidewalks more cracked, until they stood before a modest duplex on a tree-lined street near Lake Merritt. "She's in there," Marcus whispered, pointing at a second-floor window. Ethan looked up at that window and saw a shadow move behind cheap curtains. His daughter was inside that house. The duplex was painted a faded yellow that might have been cheerful once. Now it just looked tired, like everything else on this block. Chain-link fences with rust spots, toys abandoned in overgrown yards, cars with expired registration stickers. Ethan's world had been polished glass and steel for so long, He'd forgotten places like this existed. Marcus climbed the wooden steps to the second-floor entrance, each board creaking under his weight. He glanced back at Ethan with a look that said, "Last chance to turn back." He didn't turn back. Marcus knocked. A specific pattern Ethan noticed. 3 quick raps, pause, 2 more. Like a code. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, wearing a velour tracksuit and holding a cigarette. Her face was heavily made up. Her blonde hair clearly dyed. A smile automatic and completely empty.
"Marcus, baby, you're late. I was about to—"
She stopped when she saw Ethan. Her eyes narrowed.
"Who's this?"
"Mrs. Vance," Marcus said carefully. "This man was handing out flyers near the BART station, and I thought—"
"You thought what?"
Mrs. Vance's voice turned sharp.
"You know better
"Than to bring strangers here, Marcus. We talked about this." Ethan stepped forward before the woman could close the door. He'd negotiated with CEOs, venture capitalists, federal regulators. This was just another negotiation. Except the stakes were his daughter's life. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said smoothly, extending his hand. "My name is Ethan Cross. I'm with a family services organization, and we're canvassing the neighborhood about child welfare resources. Marcus was kind enough to suggest you might be interested." The lie came easily. Too easily. Mrs. Vance didn't shake his hand. She took a long drag on her cigarette, studying him with eyes that had seen 1,000 cons and run a few herself. "Family services," she repeated flatly. "You don't look like social services." "Private organization," Ethan said. "We work with foster families, provide support services. I don't need support." Mrs. Vance's smile returned, but it was knife-sharp now. "My kids are well cared for. Fed, clothed, educated. All legal and proper. So unless you've got a warrant, Mr. Cross, I think we're done here." She moved to close the door. "Please," Ethan said, dropping the act. "I'm looking for my daughter. She disappeared 3 years ago, and Marcus said nothing." Mrs. Vance's voice could have cut glass. "Marcus is a sweet boy, but he's got an overactive imagination. Sees things that aren't there. Right, Marcus?" Marcus's eyes dropped to the floor. "Yes, Mrs. Vance." "Now, Mr. Cross, I'm sorry about your daughter, truly. But I think you should leave before I call the police for harassment." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed to push past this woman, to search every room, to tear this house apart until he found Sophia. But he also recognized a wall when he saw one. Mrs. Vance wasn't going to break. Not here. Not now. "Of course," he said quietly. "I apologize for disturbing you." He descended the stairs on legs that felt like lead. Behind him, he heard Mrs. Vance hiss something at Marcus, heard the boy's small voice apologizing, heard the door slam. But as Ethan reached the sidewalk, he glanced up at that second-floor window one more time and saw a face. A girl's face. Thin. Pale. With dark hair that had once been kept in neat braids, but now hung limp and uncombed. She was staring directly at him. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds before someone yanked her away from the window, a hand grabbing her shoulder, pulling her back into darkness. But 3 seconds was enough. Ethan had memorized every millimeter of his daughter's face, the slight asymmetry of her eyebrows, the small scar above her left eye from falling off her bike at age 5. That was Sophia. His daughter was alive, and she was trapped in that house. Marcus knew he'd made a terrible mistake the moment Mrs. Vance's hand clamped around his wrist.
What did I tell you about talking to strangers? The woman's voice was syrup-sweet for any neighbors
who might hear. But her fingers dug into his skin hard enough to bruise.
Inside. Now.
The door slammed. The automatic smile vanished.
What did you tell him?
Mrs. Vance demanded.
Nothing. I swear, Don't lie to me, Marcus. That man wasn't from any family services. You think I'm stupid?
Marcus's heart hammered. In the 2 years he'd been in Mrs. Vance's care, if you could call it care, he'd learned the rules. Don't ask questions. Don't talk about the other kids who'd come and gone. Don't notice the way Mrs. Vance took phone calls in the middle of the night, speaking in hushed tones about placements and transfers. And definitely don't tell strangers about Lily.
I'm sorry, he whispered. He had a flyer, and the girl looked just like... Get to your room. Now. And if I catch you near any windows, you'll be eating dinner in the basement for a week.
Marcus fled down the narrow hallway, past the bathroom that never had hot water, past Mrs. Vance's room with its locked door and strange chemical smell. He paused at the last door, Lily's room. The girl was sitting on the edge of a bare mattress, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing.
Lily?
Marcus whispered.
Are you okay?
No response. There was never a response. Lily had barely spoken 3 words since arriving 6 months ago. Sometimes Marcus heard her crying at night, calling for someone named Daddy. Sometimes she rocked back and forth, humming a song that sounded sad and familiar. Mrs. Vance said Lily was damaged goods, that she'd come from a bad situation and needed time to adjust, that if Marcus asked too many questions, he'd end up back in the group home where bigger kids stole your shoes and counselors didn't care if you went hungry. But Marcus had always suspected something darker. Because Lily didn't act like other foster kids. She acted like someone who'd been stolen.
That man outside,
Marcus said quietly, sitting beside her.
He said his daughter went missing 3 years ago. He showed me a picture.
Lily's head turned slightly.
She looked just like you,
Marcus continued.
Same eyes, same face. He said her name was Sophia.
Lily's breathing changed. Faster, shallow.
Is that your local name?
Marcus asked.
Sophia?
For a long moment, nothing. Then Lily's voice, barely audible.
I don't remember.
The words were so broken they made Marcus's chest ache. How could someone forget their own name? Unless they'd been forced to forget. Marcus thought about the pills Mrs. Vance sometimes gave Lily, the way the girl would be groggy and confused for hours afterward, the way Mrs. Vance always said they were vitamins when Marcus asked. That night, after Mrs. Vance had gone to sleep, Marcus did something he'd never dared before. He crept into the woman's office. The door wasn't locked. Mrs. Vance was arrogant enough to think none of the kids would dare snoop. The room smelled like cigarettes and cheap perfume. A desk was piled with papers, folders, envelopes. Marcus's hands shook as he rifled through them. Bills, legal documents. And then, a folder labeled Private. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Children of various ages, all looking scared or confused. Next to each photo was a name, an age, and handwritten notes. Placed, June 2023. Transferred, August 2023. Status, closed. Marcus's stomach turned. These weren't adoption records. This was something else. Something wrong. He found Lily's photo near the bottom, but the name written beside it wasn't Lily. It was Sophia Cross.
age 7. Acquisition date, November 2022. Status, active. Acquisition. Like she was property. Marcus grabbed the folder and ran. Marcus had never run away before. In 2 years of foster care, 3 different homes, 2 group facilities, and finally Mrs. Vance's duplex, he'd learned that running only made things worse. You got caught, you got punished, you got sent somewhere even worse. But this was different. He clutched the stolen folder to his chest as he slipped out the back door at 2 a.m., Lily's hand gripped tight in his. "Where are we going?" Lily whispered. The pills were wearing off. Mrs. Vance had dosed her after the incident with the man at the door, but she was still groggy, stumbling. "Somewhere safe," Marcus lied. He had no idea where safe was. He only knew they couldn't stay, because he'd seen the rest of the folder's contents. Bank statements showing deposits of $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, labeled placement fees. Email printouts discussing product quality and client satisfaction. Shipping manifests for children. Children. Sent to addresses in Los Angeles, Seattle, Phoenix. Mrs. Vance wasn't a foster mother. She was a dealer, and kids were her merchandise. Marcus had one advantage. He'd memorized the business card the man, Ethan Cross, had dropped when Mrs. Vance sent him away. The card had fluttered onto the porch, and Marcus had pocketed it while pretending to sweep. Ethan Cross, Crosstech Industries, San Francisco office, 555 California Street. San Francisco was across the Bay Bridge, miles away, but it was also where people with money and power lived, people who could help. The 2 children moved through Oakland's dark streets like ghosts, past sleeping houses and closed bodegas, past homeless encampments where fires burned in trash cans, and people too tired to ask questions huddled under tarps. Lily stumbled again. "I'm tired." "I know. Just a little farther." They reached a 24-hour McDonald's on MacArthur Boulevard. Marcus used the 3 crumpled dollars in his pocket, money he'd saved from Mrs. Vance's rare moments of generosity, to buy a small fries. The warmth of the restaurant felt like luxury. "Lily," Marcus said carefully, watching the girl nibble on fries with mechanical movements. "Do you remember anything before Mrs. Vance's house?" Lily's eyes went distant. "Fuzzy things. A big room with lots of windows. A man who smelled like coffee. A woman who sang songs." "Your parents?" I don't know." Tears welled up. "Why can't I remember?" Marcus wished he could pull her close, comfort her the way an older brother should. But he wasn't used to physical affection. Foster care had taught him to keep his distance. Instead, he pushed the fries toward her. "Because someone didn't want you to. But we're going to fix that. I promise." They caught the first BART train at 5 a.m. Marcus held Lily's hand as they rode through the Transbay Tube, the underwater tunnel connecting Oakland to San Francisco. Other passengers, early shift workers, airport employees, barely glanced at them. 2 kids alone, invisible, just the way society liked them. The train emerged in downtown San Francisco as dawn broke. Marcus had never seen buildings this tall, streets this clean, people in suits this expensive, walking dogs that probably cost more than his entire life. 555 California Street was a glass tower that seemed to touch the sky. Security guards in the lobby, turnstiles requiring badge access. Marcus approached the main desk, folder clutched in both hands. "I need to see Ethan Cross," he said. The security guard, a middle-aged black man with kind eyes, looked down at him with surprise. "It's 6 in the morning, son.
The building doesn't officially open until... Please! Marcus's voice cracked. Tell him Marcus is here, from Oakland. Tell him I brought Lily. Something in his desperation must have registered, because the guard picked up his phone. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there are 2 young children in the lobby asking for you by name. They say it's urgent. A pause. Yes, sir. Right away. 60 seconds later, Ethan Cross burst through the elevator doors, still in yesterday's rumpled shirt, eyes wild. He stopped dead when he saw Sophia. Daddy? Lily whispered. And remembered. Ethan didn't remember falling to his knees. One moment he was standing in the Crosstech lobby, surrounded by marble and glass and the trappings of his success. The next, he was on the floor, arms wrapped around his daughter who was alive, who was here, who just called him Daddy, sobbing into her tangled hair. Sophia. Oh, God. Sophia. She was so thin, so fragile. When had she gotten so small? I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest. I'm sorry I forgot you. No. Ethan pulled back to look at her face, cupping her cheeks with shaking hands. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault. None of it. Marcus stood nearby, clutching the folder, watching the reunion with exhausted relief. Security guards hovered uncertainly. Early arriving employees stopped to stare. Ethan didn't care. Let them stare. But the whole world watch. He had his daughter back. But Marcus's quiet voice cut through his joy. Mr. Cross, you need to see these. The folder felt heavy as death in Ethan's hands. He sat in his office, Sophia curled in his lap, refusing to let go, and read every page. Every horrible, damning page. Bank records.
Showing payments from shell corporations. Emails discussing high-value acquisitions with clinical detachment. Photographs of at least 30 different children, all with those same haunted eyes. And then he found the name that made his blood freeze. Hamilton Trust, LLC. Investment partner. He knew that name. Hamilton Trust was one of Crosstech's earliest venture capital backers. They'd invested $20 million in his Series B funding 7 years ago, when the company was still scrappy and uncertain. But Hamilton Trust wasn't just investors. According to these documents, they were the financial backbone of an interstate child trafficking operation. They laundered money through charitable foundations and foster care services, moving children like inventory between West Coast cities. And one of those children had been Sophia. Ethan's hands started shaking. His vision blurred. Mr. Cross! Marcus's voice seemed very far away. Are you okay? He wasn't okay. He would never be okay again. Because the more he read, the more he understood. Sophia hadn't been randomly kidnapped. She'd been specifically targeted. Her disappearance had been too clean, too professional. The Exploratorium security footage had been mysteriously corrupted. The field trip chaperones had conveniently all been substitute teachers with no long-term ties to the school. Someone had studied his routine, his security protocols, his daughter's schedule. Someone with resources and connections had orchestrated her abduction. And some of the money that financed that operation had come from his own company. Ethan wanted to vomit. Sir? His assistant, Jennifer Park, appeared in the doorway. She stopped short at the sight of Sophia. Oh my God, is that? Call my lawyer, Ethan said quietly. His voice sounded dead even to his own ears. And call Detective Marson at the FBI. Tell him I'm bringing him evidence of a federal trafficking ring. Tell him... He looks down at Sophia's fragile form. Tell him I'm going to burn it all down.
The media explosion was instantaneous. By noon, every news outlet in America was running the story. Billionaire CEO's daughter found alive after 3 years. Massive trafficking ring exposed. By evening, FBI agents had raided Mrs. Vance's duplex, 3 storage facilities, and a supposed group home in Sacramento. They'd arrested 17 people, frozen millions in accounts. But Ethan barely noticed, because late that night, as he sat in Sophia's old bedroom, her actual bedroom, in their penthouse where she belonged, reviewing financial records with his legal team, he found something that made his soul crack open. A document authorizing the initial $20 million investment from Hamilton Trust to Crosstech, signed by him. 7 years ago, desperate for funding, he'd accepted money from monsters without asking enough questions. His success had been built on blood, and his daughter had paid the price. The FBI moved fast, but not fast enough. 2 days.
After Marcus brought Sophia to safety, Detective Morrison called with news that made Ethan's blood run cold. "We've got a problem," Morrison said. "Mrs. Vance is gone. Vanished. We think someone tipped her off." "What about the other children in the system?" Ethan demanded. "We've recovered 4 so far, but there are at least a dozen others unaccounted for." "And Cross?" Morrison's voice dropped. "We found evidence she's planning to flee the country. Tomorrow night. Private airstrip in Hayward. She's taking at least 6 kids with her." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we stop her." "We're working on warrants, coordinating with—" "There's no time for warrants." Ethan was already pulling up satellite imagery of Hayward Executive Airport on his computer. "If she gets those kids on a plane, they disappear forever." "Mr. Cross, I understand your urgency, but you need to let us handle this. You're not law enforcement." "No," Ethan said coldly. "I'm better. I'm a man with unlimited resources who's very motivated." He hung up. Marcus appeared in his office doorway. He'd been staying in the penthouse too. Ethan had filed emergency custody papers, refusing to let him return to the foster system. He looked scared. "You're going after Mrs. Vance, aren't you?" "I have to." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Those are my friends," Marcus said fiercely. "Kids I lived with. Kids who protected me when things got bad. I'm not letting you do this without me." Ethan saw himself in the boy's eyes. The same stubborn determination, the same refusal to accept injustice. "Fine," he said, "but you stay in the car." The Hayward airstrip was dark and nearly empty at 11 p.m. A few small planes sat on the tarmac like sleeping birds. Security was minimal, just a fence and a bored guard in a booth. Ethan's hired security team, ex-military contractors he'd brought in for this exact situation, had already disabled the perimeter cameras. They moved through shadows with professional efficiency. And there she was, Mrs. Vance, standing beside a small charter jet, speaking urgently into a phone. Behind her, 6 children huddled together, some Marcus's age, some younger, all terrified. Ethan stepped out of darkness into the harsh glare of runway lights. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Vance?" The woman spun, dropping her phone, her face twisted through shock, fear, and finally cold calculation. "Mr. Cross, how unexpected." "The FBI is 3 minutes behind me," Ethan said. "They have warrants, evidence, everything. This is over." "Nothing's over," Mrs. Vance smiled, and it was the most chilling thing Ethan had ever seen. "You think you're the first rich man to play hero? You think shutting down one operation matters? There are dozens more, hundreds. People with more money and power than you'll ever have. She pulled a gun from her jacket. The children screamed. Ethan's security team moved, but Mrs. Vance was faster, grabbing the nearest child, a boy who couldn't have been more.
Then 7, and pressing the barrel to his head. "Everyone stays back, or he dies!" Time slowed. Ethan saw every terrible possibility, saw this ending in blood and trauma, and another child destroyed. But then a voice called out from behind him. "Mrs. Vance? It's me, Marcus." "Marcus?" The woman's grip loosened slightly. "What are you—" "I just wanted to say thank you." Mrs. Vance blinked, confused. "Thank you for teaching me exactly what kind of person I never want to be." And Marcus threw the folder, the evidence folder, straight at Mrs. Vance's face. In that split second of distraction, Ethan's security team moved. They disarmed her in 3 seconds flat. The gun clattered to concrete. The children were pulled to safety. FBI vehicles screamed onto the tarmac, sirens wailing. Mrs. Vance was on the ground, handcuffed, screaming threats and curses. But Ethan wasn't listening. He was holding those 6 children, all of them crying, all of them safe now, whispering the same words over and over. "You're safe. You're safe. I promise you're safe." The nightmares started 3 days after Sophia came home. Ethan would wake to her screams echoing through the penthouse, raw, terrified sounds that tore his heart in pieces. He'd find her tangled in sheets, eyes wide but unseeing, calling for someone named Lily, who didn't exist, because that was the name they'd forced her to use. "I'm here, sweetheart. Daddy's here. You're home." But home was a foreign concept to Sophia now. She didn't remember the penthouse, didn't remember her room with the Princess Castle wallpaper, didn't remember the view of the Golden Gate Bridge or the toy chest filled with things she'd once loved. 3 years of drugged fog had stolen those memories. Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Ethan had hired, explained it gently. "Trauma doesn't just damage the present, Mr. Cross. It rewrites the past. Sophia's brain protected her from unbearable pain by creating distance from her old life. Bringing those memories back won't be quick or easy." "I don't care how long it takes," Ethan said. "I'll wait forever if I have to." But waiting was agony. Some days, Sophia was his daughter. She'd laugh at cartoons, ask for pancakes, want him to read her stories. Those moments felt like miracles. Other days, she was a stranger. She'd flinch when he moved too quickly, hoard food in her room, wake up screaming that bad people were coming to take her away again. The worst moment came 2 weeks after her rescue. Ethan had been in the kitchen making lunch when he heard the bathroom lock click. Normal, he thought. She was 7 when she was taken. Now she was 10. Privacy was age-appropriate. But 15 minutes passed. Then 20. "Sophia? You okay in there?" No answer. His heart started hammering. "Sophia, I need you to answer me, sweetheart." Still nothing. He broke down the door. She was sitting in the empty bathtub, fully clothed, knees pulled to her chest, rocking back and forth. "I forgot your face," she whispered. "I forgot what you looked like. I forgot Mom's voice. I forgot our house. What if I forget again? What if they make me forget?" Ethan climbed into the bathtub with her, a grown man in a suit folding himself into cramped porcelain, and held her while she sobbed. "You won't forget," he said fiercely.
I won't let you. And nobody's ever taking you away again. I swear it on my life. But what if I'm not really your daughter anymore? What if too much is broken? The question destroyed him. Sophia Rose Cross, he said, pulling back to look at her tear-stained face. You are my daughter. You always have been and always will be. I don't care if you remember every single moment of your first 7 years or none of them. I don't care if it takes 1 year or 20 for you to feel safe again. You are my daughter. Even if I'm different now? Especially because you're different now. You survived something no child should ever survive. You're stronger than I'll ever be. She studied his face, really studied it for a long moment. Then quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Can Marcus stay? Forever?" Ethan thought about the boy currently in the guest room, doing homework at a desk he'd never had before. The boy who'd risked everything to save his daughter. The boy who was just as broken by the system and just as deserving of safety. "Yes," he said. "He can stay forever." "Good." Sophia leaned against his chest. "Because he's my brother now. I decided." And just like that, Ethan's family doubled. Later that night, Dr. Chen stopped by for their regular check-in. She found all 3 of them, Ethan, Sophia, and Marcus, curled on the couch, watching Moana, sharing popcorn. "How's she doing?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. Ethan looked at Sophia's face, still haunted, still healing, but also laughing at Maui's ridiculous songs. "We're getting there," he said. "One day at a time." 6 months later, the California State Court finalized 2 decrees on the same day. In the matter of Sophia Rose Cross, custody permanently restored to biological father, Ethan Michael Cross. In the matter of Marcus James Cross, adoption granted to Ethan Michael Cross. Marcus couldn't speak when the judge signed the papers. He just stood there, staring at the document that made it official, that said he finally belonged somewhere. Tears streamed down his face. Not sad tears, but the kind that came from finally being wanted. "You're stuck with me now," he whispered to Ethan outside the courtroom. "I think I can live with that," Ethan said, putting a hand on his shoulder. The trafficking ring's dismantlement made international news. 17 arrests became 43. 4 recovered children became 71. Hamilton Trust dissolved under federal investigation. 3 board members went to prison. And Mrs. Vance, real name Margaret Holloway, received a sentence of 45 years without parole. Ethan attended every day of her trial. He wanted her
To see his face. Wanted her to know exactly what her greed had destroyed and what it had failed to destroy. On the day of sentencing, she turned to look at him one final time. "You think you won," she said. "But people like me? We're everywhere. And there are always more kids nobody cares about." Ethan stood. "You're right about one thing. There are always more kids. That's why I'm making it my life's work to care about them." And he meant it. Crosstech Industries launched a new division, Crosscare Foundation. $50 million in initial funding. Mission: identify and dismantle child trafficking networks through advanced technology, data analysis, and on-the-ground intervention teams. But more than that, Ethan changed. The penthouse got smaller. He bought a house instead. A real house in Marin County with a backyard and neighbors and a porch swing. Somewhere his children could have normal childhood experiences. He cut his work hours from 90 to 40 per week, started attending Sophia's therapy sessions, showed up for Marcus's Little League games, learned that being a father meant showing up, not just financially, but physically, emotionally, consistently. Sophia's memories returned in fragments, some good, birthday parties, bedtime stories, trips to the beach, some painful, the moment of her abduction, the first terrifying weeks in captivity, the medications that made her forget. But with each recovered memory came healing. "I remember now," she said one evening, almost a year after her rescue. They were in the backyard, watching fireflies. "I remember you used to sing me this song when I couldn't sleep. Something about stars?" Ethan's throat tightened. "You decorated my life. Your grandmother's favorite. Will you sing it now?" So he did, voice rough and off-key, while his daughter rested her head on his shoulder and fireflies danced in the gathering dark. Marcus joined them, bringing lemonade he'd made himself. He was different now, too, more confident, more willing to smile. The scared boy who'd approached Ethan on that rainy Oakland street was becoming someone braver. "This is nice," he said quietly, settling on Ethan's other side. "Yeah," Sophia agreed. "It is." And Ethan realized something profound. Families weren't just made by blood, they were made by choice, by showing up every day, by refusing to give up even when everything felt broken. His daughter had been stolen. His money had come from tainted sources. His perfect life had been built on foundations that crumbled under scrutiny. But from those ruins, he'd built something real. A family that was chosen, not assumed. A purpose that was earned, not inherited. A life measured not in stock prices or magazine covers, but in homework help and bedtime stories and lazy Sunday mornings eating pancakes. "Dad?" Sophia said. The word still made his heart skip. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "I'm glad I forgot and then remembered. Because this time, when I remember you, it's the real you. The one who Came looking. The one who didn't give up. Ethan pulled both children close. "I'll never give up," he promised. "Not on either of you. Not ever." And he meant it. Because he'd lost everything once. He'd die before he lost his family again.